Hello everyone, Namaste. I'm Ramnath, who would like to share with you some information on the brain analysis based on several articles and videos that I have gone through. This perception impacts brain analysis is a very vast subject, and I have learned very little of it out of my curiosity. So please take the useful information from this if you ever found. As always, please feel free to provide your comments or any suggestions. Thank you. Yeah, recently I came across this book, The Brain, The Story of You by David Eagleman. This triggered so much interest in me to know how the brain works. Each page had so much new information to offer. A few points stated in this book I could correlate to some of the incidents that I have observed in my life. One very important concept on perception made me more curious. Perception is influenced both by the immediate pattern of sensory inputs and by the knowledge acquired through prior experiences with the world. I could understand that it is influenced by the immediate pattern of the sensory inputs, but I was so much puzzled by this, the knowledge acquired through prior experiences. Yeah, to explain a little bit more on the perception, actually we get the sensory data from various senses we have, for example from nose, eyes or ears, like that, and that data will be passed on through electrical and then chemical signals to the brain. Then we need to infer what is out there. So we will get the sensory data and we need to infer that. Okay, but in between, the knowledge stored in the brain will also come into play, and it will use sensory data along with the knowledge and then infer the thing out there. So that is what is whole thing called perception. So we will try to know a little bit more on this in the further slides. Yeah, going by Valmiki written Ramayana story, Dasharatha practiced shooting arrows based on sound emanating sources without seeing them. This is an auditory based perception, a skill developed by Dasharatha over time. It is called Shabdabedi art. So he could shoot the sound making source, which happened to be a person rather than an animal. Okay. Shravana created, the person created the sound while dipping the vessel in water. Dasharatha thought it was an animal which made the sound. Here, perception of Dasharatha, his earlier knowledge, made him believe that an animal is drinking water. In reality, it is not. I will not go beyond this in the interest of time. I'll take another example. Please observe these two lines and this vertical line and this vertical line. Which one of these two is the longest? This is created by German psychiatrist Franz Müller in 1800s. Okay, so most of us would tend to agree that this will be the longest. In reality, if you observe, these both are of the same length. Okay, so there is some illusion to our eyes, but the same illusion was shown to the Bushmen from South Africa. But do you know that they did not show that these are two different and two different in length? They figured out that these two are identical in length, and if you see further, they could figure out that there is cultural difference between the Bushmen and to our culture, because The Bushmen lived in worlds with very few straight lines. Their houses, often made of thatch, were either somewhat rounded and devoid of the hard lines that dominate usually our interiors, okay, or our environment. Aside to this, they spent most of their time gazing at natural scenes of grasslands, trees, and water that similarly lacked specific geometric angles, say for the 45 degrees, 90 degrees, like that. So these people who live in non-geometric interiors were not used to judging the size of objects based on the rules of three-dimensional visual perspective that we often do. So that is why they did not perceive that these two lines are of different in length. Yeah, let us find out some more information on the formation of perception. More than half the brain is devoted to process sensory information, and for processing visual data alone, 1/3 of the brain is devoted. So as you probably know, the brain consumes roughly 25% of one's metabolic resources. You may wonder why it is so. So there are approximately 80 billion neurons exist in our brain, and each neuron can make around 1,000 connections. Not only during awakened period, even during sleep, the brain will be working. Hence it consumes so much power for the body to brain size ratio, which is a key metric which is completely different or exorbitantly different to other species. So the brain does not passively perceive the information, but it provides information to help complete whatever it is sensing. That is the key. Okay. So Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, was mentioning that no man ever steps in the same river twice. What it means is, like, a person will not experience in the life a river, I mean, so no person will experience in the life same thing twice. That means, like, once he experiences the situation, then he will have an improved perception. Once he has an improved perception, he is a changed man. Then he will not step into the same river, because even a river, which is life, is also moving. So it is possible, one more thing is, it is possible to train and improve the perception with cognitive stimulation. So that is why if you observe, the child will be encountering the object many a times. So compared to us, he will be encountering many a times, basically to refine its impressions of that object. So once he got the full impression of the object, just like us, adult, I mean, that child also get bored of that, and he will grow out of it. So he is also not experiencing the same river twice. So that is why we need to improve our assessing and knowing how much we have the perception and all that, because that will really help the our way of interacting with the world. So it will come to us of use in academics and medicine, or in any professional area. The process of perception begins with an object in the real world. By means of light, sound, or any other physical process, the object stimulates the body's sensory organs. So these sensory organs transform the input energy into neural activity. So these neurons in the brain and nerves can send or relay electrochemical signals to other neurons. So this is about sensation. Okay, now coming to the perception. Perception requires organizing and understanding the incoming sensation information. So in order for sensations to be useful, we must first add meaning to those sensations. It is very, very key. So perception means the brain makes sense out of the input from sensory organs. For example, in this picture, sensation will say that this is a red object. It has some gas flames coming and it is on the burner, that much only. But the perception says this is a hot element, don't go near to this except with proper care. So it is completely different to sensation. So if you observe closely, hereditary, needs, peer group, interests and expectations will all influence our perception. So basically, if you observe carefully, you will know that perception is important to recognize because it is the driving force behind our reaction to things. It is our significant power that helps us survive in many odd situations. Let us get some more information on the sensory information. So before we go further, let us take one small question. How many senses do we have? Okay, so most of the people can tell that. So it is 5 senses. Okay, touch and taste, sight, hearing and smelling. Okay, these are the roughly the regions where they are located. Their signals go in the brain. Okay, and aside to these many senses, neuroscientists will also say that there are some more senses, okay, which we have. So equilibrioception, that means for balancing the body, nociception for recognizing the pain, and proprioception for body awareness, that means like where each organ exists. Thermoception means to know the body temperature. Okay, temporal perception means like what time is it, what season is this, all that information and what it will be able to tell. So aside to this, there are few more senses. So approximately 15 to 30 different senses exist. So don't only say whenever somebody asks you how many senses we have, just 5. Okay, that is for the earlier period of our growth. Yeah, formation of visual perception. So the ability to see and interpret light information within the visible spectrum that arrives to our eyes. That means like, so as we know, we cannot see the infrared rays, ultraviolet rays, gamma rays, X-rays. So we can see only the visible spectrum. So to perceive visual information, it is not enough for light to reflect off an object and thus stimulating our retinal receptor cells for them to send this information to the correct brain areas. So it is not just this much. So actually it is doing much more. That means like it is doing the selection, organizing the data and interpreting the information. All these things is the main thing as part of the visual perception. So the formation of perception depends on these criteria. Selection means the how we are selecting the information. That means like to do this one, we need to be attentive and we should use your experiences and preferences. Okay. Coming to the organization, we need to gather the stimuli in groups in order to give them meaning by following specific criteria. So by grouping these things, we can figure out that all these things, even though they are of different cars, we call them as cars. But if we see a bicycle, we'll again group them into a different bucket, and we do not mix up these two items. So based on the color, size, shape, orientation, and different other metrics, we organize the data. Aside to that, interpretation. So if you, as we have discussed earlier, not only just we receive that this is a flame and it is red in color and all, we will also interpret by knowing the previous data as per the selection and organization. We'll say that what to interpret based on the items we are observing. Yeah, as evident from the previous information, the perception can be trained and improved based on certain criterion like right selection and organization. Thus, automatically the inferences will likely be more progressive and useful. So be with satsangam, then to a large extent you will infer the right things. Okay, so it is also mentioned in Sanatana Dharma that yat bhava tat bhavati. What it means is what you think, that you become. What you think, that you become. That means like inferences are influenced by the prior knowledge. This prior knowledge, if you are with good association, then you will have good knowledge and good memories that will influence the outcome. Yeah, these are the several references that I have gone through to make these slides, and in the part 2 I will cover the next part where I will touch upon the brain anatomy and the thalamus and visual cortex, how the data flow happens in that.